Hello and welcome to this episode of the Brand Up Podcast. This week's guest I'm thrilled to introduce to you, and it is Katie Tucker, who is a market research expert extraordinaire, an author of a soon-to-be released book that I have already gotten my sticky fingers on because I'm super lucky, but you can very soon get your sticky fingers on. Do penguins eat peaches? It is an essential question that you want to be asking in your business, and you're about to find out why. Katie is also a world traveler, has done extraordinary things with her family, is a mama, and many other things besides. And she is going to tell us today why it is absolutely business critical for every single founder and every single brand to do research, even when you may think it's too late, even when you don't know where to start. Katie is going to guide us through it. So welcome, Katie, to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Anne, for having me.
It's a pleasure. Okay, let's dive right in. Tell me, because it's about to be released, what made you want to write a book about market research and edit it and publish it now? Why now? Why is Do Penguins Eat Peaches so necessary right now?
So I discovered, I'll start again. Writing a book has always been a dream of mine, and I'm sure it's a dream for a lot of people. I did not think that my first book would be about market research. It's not the sexiest topic, but it is so important because I was seeing in my community online, in my friends, at my co-working space, too many small businesses going about their business, putting so much effort and passion into their businesses and not getting much results because they were guessing what their audience needed. And sometimes you guess subconsciously. So you're assuming, yeah, I know my audience likes this, or I'm sure my customer's going to like this. And sometimes you're doing it intentionally because actually going to find out can be a little bit scary. But essentially, I was thinking there is another way. I've worked in larger businesses and they are doing it another way. And there's no reason why small businesses can't adopt some of these practices and strategies to help them, thrive and survive. It was just disheartening for me to see so many of my business community, not knowing how to do it, putting random polls out on Instagram and in their newsletters, not necessarily asking the right questions, and launching things that sometimes didn't work, despite all that passion and energy behind it. So it was timely because, post-pandemic, I think a lot of businesses are struggling, and a lot of small businesses are shutting shop, basically, whether it's online or in person. I think the stats are quite dire, actually. After 3 years in business, there's like 40 or 50% of small businesses that are closing, and I think this can help them not close, or at least make an informed decision about whether it's something they want to pursue. So I got really excited, and I'm trying to get everyone else excited about market research and understanding customers as well.
So you're on a one-woman mission to rebrand and make market research sexier. You're in the right place at the Brand Up Podcast. We're going to do just that for everyone who's listening today. So for our listener who is a founder of a business and perhaps a few years in, maybe has had thoughts of chucking it in because it's hard, or has felt those moments of being disheartened because this idea, this program that they've spent hours and hours and weeks putting together, and all of these amazing, beautiful pieces, and it's a 12-week program or a 6-week program or a 6-month program or whatever it is, or they've made their version of Object 17. It's always a blue Japanese mug with me. I always have these mugs with me. So if you're listening and you haven't seen them, go to my Instagram. You will definitely see the blue Japanese mugs showing up all the time. If you are a founder and you've been in business for a while and you've had those moments of discouragement, or you've wondered why something you were so sure about didn't work, is it too late to do market research?
And I think that's the brilliant thing about market research, is that it's never too late to seek intentionally from your audience, what they want, or what they don't want in some cases. I think traditionally we think of market research as something you do at the beginning of a new idea, a new business, a new product, a new service, and that if you haven't done it at the beginning, then that's it. You kind of all is lost. But there's so much that can be learnt in failure, as we know, and launching something that doesn't work is a great opportunity. Once you've brushed yourself off, because it can be soul destroying to put so much effort into something that doesn't work. But going back to the people who you want to buy your products or your services, and talking through with them, and we can maybe talk about that a little bit in terms of how to structure some of those conversations, but talking to them, I think that's the biggest message in my book. There's surveys. I've got lots of information and tips about how to do good surveys, how to do desk research, which is a great place to start as well. But ultimately, the biggest message is to actually speak to your customers and to speak to your audience and set up intentional conversations. This doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be many. You don't have to do like 100 interviews, but you need to have these ongoing conversations to really unpick where your customers are at and understand potentially in the case of launching something and they don't buy it, what was it about it that didn't fit the bill, or did you purchase anything else this month as opposed to purchasing my course? So just being an explorer, really. And I think that's another notion that I take through the book, having that curiosity. And that can be hard when we're founders because we're so close to our business. So emotions obviously always get involved. It's not like you're working in a big company, something didn't work out. It's not as personal. So I think it takes some courage to do the market research and try to figure out why. But it's always, what awaits on the other side of those great questions, and that curiosity is always worth it. You will always learn something.
I'm just going to take a break. Can you see if you just hold your mic up like this? I know it's a bit tedious, but we might hear you a little bit closer, because when you put your head down, I hear you a little better than when you have your head up.
Okay, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
this is
way
better. Yeah.
Oh,
okay, I'll just hold it here. I just like glue. No,
right. But if you do that, then you start to get this kind of stuff. You get it's too close, so you don't want to be breathing on it. But if it's
here's
try
okay.
Now. Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah,
okay.
It's way better. So I know it's not very comfortable, and like me,
That's fine. I've done that
when you talk.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's come back. I had a question that was formulating in my mind. So hearing you talk about how we have this sense of, if we haven't done it at the very beginning, then it's too late. We've missed the boat, and we were just going to have to keep muddling along. When is the right time to do market research?
So, it's great to have some guidelines. So if you are at the beginning of a project or the beginning of a new idea, and if you're like me, and I think Anne, we're quite similar, we have a lot of ideas.
Yep.
And one requires a filter to ensure that we're putting our time and effort in the right thing. So at the beginning, like if you're planning your next 6 months, or if you're thinking about the year ahead, those tend to be the times when you're thinking about, okay, what could I launch? What do I need to do? That's always a good time to do some market research, either, some desk research, so just some Google searches. Let's say you're trying to launch a course to help small businesses with social media. Just start looking at social media trends, with your target audience. And so that's a good place to start. And then setting up some interviews with your customers, because your ideas are basically hypothesis. You don't know whether they're going to stick yet or not. And that's having that kind of explorer scientist mindset. You have these ideas and you are going to speak to, let's say, a handful of people, let's say 5 or 7 people, and explore with them some of the themes that you're, obviously, depending on what business you're in, around their social media use, what are their challenges, what are their pain points, and just see whether then you can identify some themes that kind of stick and verify some of the hypothesis that you have on what you were going to launch that particular year. So the beginning is really important. And then during if we're talking about like a yearly plan, I think during the year, what you want to be doing is at least another touch point with customers. talking to them, like actually having a customer interview. And then in between, I pepper that with making sure you're doing, even if it's every 6 weeks, some proper desk research around your area, keeping on top of trends, maybe a survey once a year as well. My book really advocates for, this is not a stop-start exercise. It's a mindset that you embody. Hopefully, once you've read the book, Anne, you're like, okay, this isn't just, right, I've got something to launch, I need to do my market research. Absolutely, but it's more of a, how can I stay curious the rest of the time? How can I, read through the lines when I'm talking to customers, when they send me an email, when they're not responding to a call to action, or they're not following up, or you do discovery calls and they're not actually then going on to commit to buy with you. I'm just trying to read through the lines, and I think that can, once you've adopted that kind of curiosity mindset, that explorer mindset, you'll be surprised at how much of the details that you might have been missing can help shape your business.
Yeah, and as you're listening to those conversations, because that is so much an essential part of the art. I mean, it's such an essential, piece of the art of doing market research, is listening skillfully. As you're listening, you may also discover that while whatever the plan was that you had may not be exactly what your clients are looking for, you may very quickly be able to produce something, or be it a physical object or a solution, or a coaching offering or something that will better meet their need faster than the maybe more complex thing that you were planning on creating. And so what happens when you adopt this mindset of curiosity, this explorer mindset, and I love that perspective, because it feels less personal, right? When you're the scientist or the explorer, you begin to embody curiosity in your business. It's no longer a vindication or valuing of you, yes, no, black and white. It's, oh, this is maybe a direction that, oh, nope, that's a wall. That's not what they're interested in. Oh, but they are really interested in these 3 things. I didn't even think about that, because that's something I'm so used to doing that, of course, well, no, not everybody knows how to do that thing or achieve that result with their art or their dog training or whatever. So having that, I love that idea of, it isn't just at the beginning, but it's really a mindset, even though that's a word that's a little overused. It's a mindset of being curious. And I wonder what would happen if I had these conversations. Now, something that I learned from you a long time ago when we worked together, and you've been a guest in my Loud and Clear group brand voice and messaging program. One of the things that I learned from you, and that I had learned decades ago as well, and so it has stood the test of time, is the importance of knowing how to ask questions. What to do and what not to do, because questions are most often quite leading, even when we don't intend them to be. So can you talk a little bit about, speak to our listener who is a founder, very likely neurodivergent, like me and most of us are, right? And so there are layers of emotion, layers of fear, layers of complexity. And when we see this incredible complexity of what we could be talking about and all the people we could be talking to, often we can get stuck. So think about that person. What are the good things to do when you're formulating questions, whether they be to have a conversation with someone like this? I mean, not in a podcasting studio, but a conversation over Zoom, or to, as you're creating a survey, how can you write good questions or ask good questions that get you the information you want? And what should you avoid?
That's my favorite question, and asking me about questions. And absolutely, that explorer's mindset, before I give some tips on questions, it just gives you that permission, I think, a safe space to potentially fail in a good way. And it's like that test and learning and experiment. Mm-hmm. So in terms of questions, I think I can give a few examples that we can work through at the same time. But my first tip is, like, don't ask people outright whether they're interested in your idea. So I often take the example of a company or like a founder looking at launching a subscription type package. Maybe they they have a site online where they have like separate gifts, like independent brands, and they're thinking of doing like a subscription box. And the number one mistake I see is founders going in and asking their audience, "Oh, I'm thinking of launching a subscription box with all my products, maybe for women, maybe on a monthly basis. Is that something you'd be interested in?" People, on the whole, they are supportive. No one really likes to feel uncomfortable, and they're likely to say, yes, that sounds like a great idea. They have no skin in the game. They can say yes, and then you can go away and get all excited because, you've done a poll on Instagram and you have, a majority of the people, 80% who said, yeah, I quite like that idea. That is not a guarantee that they will buy your subscription box. And I think what you need to be looking at, and if there's like kind of one takeaway around questions, is seek the behavior that you're looking for your product to be a success. So in this case, it would be having a conversation with your customers, not necessarily saying, maybe at the end of the conversation, you can say, this is something I'm thinking about, but you're asking them, do you currently subscribe to any subscription boxes? And it doesn't have to be necessarily the same category as yours. It can be, some people have food boxes, some people have, wine boxes, beauty boxes. I mean, the subscription market is quite diverse. You're looking for someone who already pays on a monthly basis for something. It doesn't have to be exactly the same product as yours, because a lot of people might say, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. When you explore the behavior, oh, so tell me, have you got any subscription boxes currently? How many do you have? Oh, actually, I don't subscribe to any boxes. And then you're like, okay, have you in the past? Maybe they have, and then you can unpick with them why they stopped. So it's just about, seeking those behaviors. Like if you're launching in-person events, oh, I'm thinking of doing an in-person event. Let's say you're a service business and you were going to do like a brand event, Anne, for example, and you ask your audience, would you be interested in attending post-COVID? Oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. You put the tickets out and no one buys. If you explore beforehand with your audience, like when was the last time you actually went to an in-person event over the last 6 months? So you're starting to get evidence, to build an evidence file really, to see whether in your audience they're kind of warm or doing those behaviors that you need for that product to be a success. So biggest takeaway here is really like, don't ask customers outright whether they're interested in your idea. There's a time and place for that down the line. But initially, when you're in that exploratory phase, just explore the behaviors so you don't start doing too much work, spending too much money and energy without having properly kind of evidenced. So that would be probably like the most important thing when it comes to questions face to face, and one that sounds counterintuitive, because it's like, oh, I'm asking customers what they want. I'm asking whether I'm involving them. This is market research, and it's actually no, just kind of tweak those questions to explore the behaviors. Talk me through the last time you went to an event. Talk me through whether you subscribe to any subscription boxes. Have you purchased a premium brand over the last year? Like, look for the behaviors, and that will be so much more powerful.
Yeah, the behaviors, and then I would imagine as well what drove those behaviors. So to selfishly use your example, I have thought about, and I've had various clients say to me, you should totally do an event, or people who know me, you should totally run a retreat, a brand voice and messaging retreat. It would be so amazing. And because they know that I'm also a highly trained yoga teacher and meditation teacher, and they know that I hold space, and holding space for a group is part of what I've done for years and years and years. And I love it. And I love being in person with people. It's a whole different energy. And so they will say, oh, you should totally do it. It'd be amazing. A retreat with you all weekend, or a 3-day retreat. One of the questions that I would have, beyond when is the last time that you went, have you ever been on a business retreat? First of all, that gives me a yes or no, which is not so useful, but it would be what I would tend to ask. Then if the answer was yes, or maybe I just started with, when's the last time you paid to go to an in-person event? And what was that? Tell me about the event and what drove you to purchase that event. The next thing, as you were talking, that I would want to ask naturally is, how much did you pay for it? How much would you be willing to pay? And what would you expect to have happen? Is that a question that makes sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what you touched on there, Anne, was around having those, like ensuring that you're having a majority of open-ended questions. So your question there was, have you been to a business type retreat over the last 6 months or so? That's a great starter question. You might get a yes, you might get a no, but then it's all about the why, and how did you go about choosing it? Where did you find out about it? Would you be willing to share how much you paid for it? Did you feel that was good value for money? Just so you can start getting those pricing brackets, because pricing is another area. I have quite a big section on that in the book as well, because I think as founders and small businesses, it's a struggle, and even it's a struggle for me. Even though I know all the theory, it's still a struggle. I think when it comes to pricing, you haven't got a big corporate with a big pricing department doing all this complicated stuff for you. And so, yeah, having those open-ended questions, asking them, what you're looking for essentially, Anne, is stories. You're looking for customer stories, and to do that, you need to ask them questions that are going to trigger that kind of natural flow of conversation. So yeah, tell me about the last time you actually went on one of these business retreats. Talk me through a couple of days before. What happened when you got there? What did you do next? And you'll be surprised. I think a lot of people are resistant. They think, oh, I'm going to take people's time. I'm asking, these questions are quite, not personal, but require not just yes and no answers. But you will be surprised, like literally 9 times out of 10, customers actually, they cherish these conversations. Like once you've had them, they're actually really, they often thank you afterwards. They think, wow, that was actually really cathartic. You asking me, it's not a selling call. You're really just asking them to explore with them their behaviors, their habits around whatever area of business you're in. So those open-ended questions are really important as well.
You touched on the idea of, I don't want to take people's time. Maybe it feels complicated for us to reach out in an email, reach out through social media and say, I'm looking for 5 people to spend. How much time is reasonable to ask to spend?
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Looking for 5 people to give me 30 minutes of their time. I would love to not pick your brain, because I also care a lot about language, as you know. But 5 people to spend 30 to give me 30 minutes to get curious about your experience with blah, or to get curious about what you know about da. And I'm thinking about my clients, most of whom are neurodivergent, many of whom have ADHD, and every single step of that process can feel overwhelming, because I need to make the decision and to recognize that market research will be a good idea. Oh my God, market research is a whole field. I don't even know where to start. All right, I've recognized market research is a good idea. I bought Do Penguins Eat Peaches?
Yay.
Excellent. Good call. Now I need to read Do Penguins Eat Peaches? Right? Because how many, hands up, who has a book at home that they have ordered, very excited, and haven't read? One day I'll take a picture of all of my bookshelves. I actually have to, in my bedroom on different bits of furniture, things aren't falling over, but there's so many amazing books. And if I could absorb their goodness through osmosis, I would be a walking encyclopedia. However, so ordering Do Penguins Eat Peaches, reading Do Penguins Eat Peaches, because it's so good. And I know this because I was one of the very lucky pre-readers for Katie, and it's so good. And I also, P.S., love that it was written by you, a woman, because the world of market research is so suffocatingly, predominantly male, usually white, and just isn't diverse. And so to have you as a young woman writing a book with all of your experience and your take on it is so refreshing. Okay, close parenthesis. But to know that, do enough learning that you can understand the value of it, and then to not feel overwhelmed as a neurodivergent founder, or specifically one with ADHD. Like, okay, I know I need to do this. I've read about it. I've learned enough. I've heard Katie and Anne have this conversation. My questions, I need to actually have conversations with people. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. That means I need to write an email, or I need to create social posts, and I need to put them out there, and maybe nobody's going to respond. What if the wrong people respond? What if I get information and I don't understand it right? What if, right? So I could feel, as I was reading the book, And just noticing in myself, and having had so many conversations with the almost 40 people who've come through Loud and Clear, which is the program I mentioned earlier, the deep desire to get it right often means that we don't do it at all, because we're so eager to do the best job we can and get the best results for our clients or for our business or for ourselves. And it often stops us. So one of the things that you talk about is good enough in the book. You talk about good enough research. So what is good enough research, and what can my amazingly talented and brilliant neurodivergent microscopic detail seeing, creative thinking listener, what can they do that will be good enough to get them the information they need and then keep moving?
Yeah, I really like that you've brought that up, Anne, because it can feel overwhelming. I think good enough research for me, and I was really keen to put that in the book. And I think the book is really supportive and encouraging, and I wrote it as such because what I don't want is people to read it and think, I haven't been doing this, or you've been doing it wrong, you've been asking the wrong questions. It's an exploration really of like some of the reasons why we don't do it, as you were saying. And I think for founders with neurodiversities and ADHD, some of these things can be even more heightened, some of the resistance. So good enough research is about, what do I need to find out to make the next best decision? Not all the decisions, not like, all the decisions for the rest of the year. What do I need now to move my business forward? What are my priorities at the moment? And which ones carry the most risk, I suppose, if I don't check, and it's all about that. It's all about kind of saving yourself from, whether it's heartache or, financial loss or, energy, morale. It's really about market research. Maybe that's a bit meta, but it can actually it's to protect you, it's to kind of reduce the risks and make sure that you're, putting all your passion into the right things. And I think, people with ADHD have some brilliant qualities, I think, that make them very, great people to do market research in terms of, the attention to detail. What I've tried to do in the book is to create some frameworks. 'Cause I like that as well. Like I like to have, this is all great, but how do I implement this? And once I have a framework, then I'm more comfortable being a bit loose within the framework, but at least I have some parameters. So at the back of the book, I've got 3 methods, basically. I think it's the stone, the peach, and the penguin. Very original for the
Listen,
and they're
I
basically the
love those
3
methods.
ways. And they just break down all the different types. So desk research, how often am I recommending to do it? Customer interviews, how long do I recommend? How often do I recommend going on some of the, the fancy tools that are out there online that you could use to understand your audience, like Ask the Public, and Also Ask is another one. We can put them maybe in the show notes because they're quite good ones to have a look at. And also, how often to do a survey. And so you kind of got a bit of a guideline there, and that's kind of the minimum. And it's not, it really doesn't shouldn't take too much time, because I've purposely put that first level at, this is manageable, this is going to help me, but it's not like throwing the whole kitchen sink at it either. And then you have the second one, which is the peach, which is like, okay, I'm getting comfortable at this. I'd like to up my game. Maybe I've got a few more launches this year. My business is getting bigger, or I just want to double down. I'm actually enjoying this. I'm going to do a bit more of it. And then obviously the last one, which is the penguin, that's kind of like, if you've got a bit more support, if you have a team, then you can start doing things a bit more frequently. So hopefully it kind of takes them, how do I get from all this amazing advice to actually making this work in my business? So I've purposely put these kind of 3 methods in at the back. And then probably I'll have a link to the website so you can cut them out and stick them on the wall, because I quite like that. If you can see something visually, kind of keeps you on the straight and narrow. But good enough research. So it's really about, dialing down those voices that are saying, I have to get this all right. Otherwise there's no point trying, to, what could I, what's my next decision, and how can I make it a bit more robust by asking some people. And I think, even if it's starting with, if the fear of speaking to people, that's too much to start with, even some really good desk research, there's some amazing reports out there for free. And, I've got quite a few links of great websites in the book where you can just start having that kind of broader picture understanding. That's really, that can really help as well. So there's no wrong way of doing it. There's just, if you don't do it, then it's just a real shame, because I don't like seeing, amazing business owners, not fulfilling their own dream of running their own businesses because of some of this knowledge or skills that can be learnt.
As you're talking, I'm feeling some bubbling up of excitement, because as someone with ADHD, super high marks in all the types of ADHD, when they did my assessment, it was like I got the best grades I could for all the types all together. And when a new idea arrives, it is so enlivening, it is so exciting, and it's often born of a conversation with one of my clients or a number of my clients, or something I've noticed, or a discussion in a community like the one where we met in Real Work. It's so exciting, and often I don't want to do other things like make dinner or do the boring admin task or file my taxes or whatever thing is, because I'm just so excited by this new idea. And I still love all the other things that are still running, but I'm so excited. And there's part of me that's like, what? You want me to slow down and do market research? But I just want to run. And in an accountability group that I've been in since 2019, so 4 years now, most of us are neurodivergent. And I remember having this conversation with one of the people in the group who is on, I think, the third business that she has started, plus writing a book, plus. She's incredible. She's incredibly generative, very generous with her knowledge. And she's such a starter, but she's not so much a completer finisher like many of us. And I remember saying to her, hang on a second, I know that you're super excited about this, but have you asked? Have you asked? I mean, it's such a great idea. You're like going off into creating the brand visuals and doing all of these. Whoa, have you had a conversation? And I spoke to her about you, and you were writing your book at the time. So this was pre-publication. So as you're listening, you can pre-order Katie's book right now. And please do, because it makes all the difference to the sales and to how many bookstores will carry it and so on and so forth. Let's support new authors. And Katie's book is brilliant. She is not a new market researcher. She is simply a first-time author, but definitely not a last time, if I can look into the future and hope. But I remember having that conversation with this friend and saying, remember to ask. And upon asking, she found out a bunch of information that actually meant that particular project, suddenly she was able to identify the opportunity much more clearly, and also starkly see the risk that was involved with the approach that she had felt so excited about taking. And so as I'm thinking about, a new idea bubbling up, but I don't necessarily want to slow down. I just want to go make the thing because I'm feeling the juice now. And when I'm feeling the juice, if I don't attend to it, the juice often goes away. My clients tell me the same. So what I'm hearing from you is something that will actually help sustain the juice. Because if we have these great ideas and we already have created for ourselves, or we draw on your book, which is the way easiest, and I'm all about easy hacks from my brain that goes madly off in a million directions. We go to the back of your book and we choose the stone, sorry, not the pit. That's awful. We choose the stone, or we choose the peach, and we simply follow the instructions, because you've done all the thinking for us. Thank you very much. And all of the career building and all of the research. We don't have to go become professional market researchers. You are, and you're teaching us. So that's great. We go and we say, okay, we integrate. Right now, I'm super excited. I want to make this the best I can, because we always do. And in order to do that, I'm going to follow this recipe, and it's going to give me enough structure to have the information I need to then go wild with my creative, but have way more chance that all of that energy and all of that time and all of those that investment that I put into this new idea, this new offering, this new product actually yields benefit for my clients and for my business. Because while I'm doing all of that, I'm not doing other things that could be generating revenue.
No, absolutely. And I think, there are a lot of people out there that get excited and want to go straight in. And I have got a section in the book about, doing can be testing too, as long as you're not throwing everything at it. And some examples, where you can just launch something that has the essence of the end product that you're getting excited about, but you're scaling it back down to something smaller to start with, and you test small and you test often, and that might suit. Who knows? We'll see after the book's published, Anne, but that might be more suitable for founders with diagnosed with ADHD or self-diagnosed, because there is the doing. So you've got that excitement of actually putting something out there, not stopping for too long. But what it will do is it will stop you putting out this, too much too soon, and scale back your idea. So I think one of the examples in the book I have is, for example, if you're like a personal trainer, as an example, and you'd love to launch, your own class basically, and hire a venue somewhere, and that can be quite risky. So your first iteration would probably be, okay, let's start with the channels that I already have, like on social, for example, doing some exercise advice. Then you could do some online. Then you could do a pop-up in an event, not far from you, just a one-off. And then you build it slowly. You learn as you go along, instead of hiring out, a space on a 6 months basis every Saturday, and then maybe no one turns up. But you can break it down, and then you can learn along the way. And you might learn that actually people are actually really seeking out those in-person exercise experiences now, as opposed to we've had a lot of fitness on Zoom, and that maybe only goes so far. So it's trying to think of your idea. Same if you want to set up a cafe. I mean, how many cafes have I seen that they just go all in on the cafe and then they struggle, and then a year, 2 years later, this beautiful cafe where there was a lot of heart and passion, they close. And it's how can you break that down into, that's the ultimate goal, potentially the dream. And then, okay, let's do maybe just some catering for parties, or again, like a pop-up at a market on the weekend, and just kind of, be patient enough to test small, test often, and then maybe you arrive at that big idea that you had. Or maybe it might be something different, even more amazing, but you won't know until you kind of, break it down and test often.
And what about someone who has a business that is a going concern, it's trucking along, and they have certainties about their clients? I know from reading your book and from having conversations, the potential traps that lie in this concept of certainty, because to me, certainty is the opposite of curiosity. Some would say that, being closed is the opposite of curiosity, but to me, certainty means that a little bit. I'm certain, I know, and I have teenagers in the house, and boy, oh boy, do I ever receive a whole lot of certainty about what is and isn't possible, and what is happening and what isn't, and one of the benefits of essentially 5 decades on the planet is that I can now look at that and go, oh, I know exactly what that feels like, and also maybe not. Also, what if something different? And there's so much richness in there. So can you talk a little bit about, even if you're running a membership and it's doing really well, but you have plans for growth, and maybe you're struggling a little bit, or maybe you're struggling with retention in your membership, or you want to do a new offering, you want to have a new spinoff, and I'm using inverted commas for those of you who are not watching us on YouTube or socials, things about your audience. Talk to us about the pitfalls of knowing when things are going well.
Yeah, I actually have a subheading in the book called "Assumptions Kill Dreams." It sounds quite dramatic, Anne, but they do. And I think, assumptions can be so strong on your audience and customers, especially if you've been in business a while, that you don't even recognize that they are assumptions about your audience. And also, things change. So what was right about your community 6 months ago, or 12 months ago, it might not be true anymore. I mean, I think if one thing, the global pandemic has taught us, that things can change very quickly. You can shift a whole society online and shut them indoors, and people's behavior has changed as a result of that, and probably changed forever. And if you are not, okay, that's a huge example, but things are subtly shifting all the time in society. And if we don't keep our fingers on the pulse and be too, let our egos convince us that we're an expert with our audience. Like, I know my audience, and there's a lot of big, arrogant, big companies out there that do that as well. I'm not saying they spend a lot of money on research, but they don't always do it right either. And I think it's so important, when you have those assumptions rising in you, when you start looking at an idea, think about, what has to be true for this to work. And then if your brain comes up with an answer, well, I need to have like 44-year-old women willing, they're dying to go on a retreat, to be in a safe space, etc., etc. How do we know that to be true? And just keep questioning yourself. And then I do that with, you talk about teenagers, I have a teenager as well, and I think that the certainty at the moment, like the black and whiteness of the opinions, and just trying to kind of start shifting a little bit and saying, well, how do you know that to be true? How do you know that to be true? And we can't go around checking everything. Like, I'm not saying every single decision has to be checked, but what we want to be doing is just checking enough to reduce the risk, basically. And there's a lot of things that are built on assumption. And I share in the book a big failure of mine. And when I came back from a family gap year, and I decided that I was going to launch a travel course for other families that were going to embark on a life-changing round the world trip. And I made a lot of assumptions. Was I an expert in family travel? Well, probably more than most, because I just spent the last year traveling with like a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old and my partner across, multiple countries with like allergies and all kind of things like that. But I assumed, and I should have known better. Like, I worked in big companies before. We tested like £1 million products. But, when you want something so bad, and I just quit my job before leaving as well, so I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Those assumptions can be really strong. You have to keep it in check. They can be really strong.
They look
no
like
doubt,
facts.
they do. And there were voices in my head that were probably saying, Katie, like, you probably want to check this before you go all in and start writing all the modules for this course, and just asking people on it, and people are saying to me, oh yeah, that sounds great. Luckily, COVID actually saved me from a lot of pain, because COVID shut the world down, and so there was no travel course. Like, that idea was not going to happen. But if COVID wouldn't have happened, like, I don't know how far I would have gone before listening to the voice that I was quietening, saying, you need to check. You haven't checked, have you? You haven't checked. And so, it can happen to all of us. It's human. It's human nature to kind of protect yourself from uncomfortable feelings and failure, and because we still think, our brains sometimes still think we're in prehistoric ages, and there's danger. Like, those kind of things come across as danger. So, I do break that down a lot in Do Penguins Eat Peaches as well, to show the humanness and the normality of some of these fears that we have, fears of failure, going too far down the road and having to turn back. Oh, might as well just keep going. All those kind of things. Like, we unpick that in the book to show you that we're all like that. You are not alone. This book is just to be conscious. Like, if we can get our conscious thinking catching out the subconscious, then that's good. That's good.
Yeah. And it is immensely reassuring to know that you also have fallen into the trap of, I know, my excitement is actually turning into knowledge and influence over all of the people that I can see eventually buying the book, right? Because somehow we're super powerful in this, in our desire. We confuse our desire and our excitement with a need in the audience. And that is such a human thing to do. And if there's one thing that people can remember from this conversation as we wrap up, is, other than pre-order Katie's book, Do Penguins Eat Peaches, and support this brilliant author and learn this stuff for your business, because it will make the difference between hemorrhaging energy and time and potentially money, and missing out on other opportunities, and actually creating something that your people really, really need, that might feel even more exciting and even more something that you're even more proud of than that original idea that you had. But if there's one thing to remember, as I come back to what I was going to say, is this mindset of curiosity. And what could I find out now? As opposed to, what if I get it wrong? It's too hard. It's too complex. It doesn't have to be. Read Do Penguins Eat Peaches. Go to the structures at the back of the book and have a look at the one that suits you, and give yourself a break. You don't have to make all the decisions on your own. You don't have to learn all the theory of market research. Katie has an entire career behind her of doing this, and she's done it for us. So start there and do as much research as is good enough, and then decide if you go. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's having that, giving yourself a break. Like, don't be too hard on yourself. I think the wish for this book is, even if you read it all and you don't do some of the tasks, that something will change in you. I'm hoping that, something will stick. And even if that one thing sticks and you change behavior in your business, I think that makes me really, that will make me really happy, because it is all about helping and unlocking the secrets and the knowledge that are tucked away so often in like corporate boardrooms or business books that you wouldn't pick up because they have boring titles. And so no, I think that's a fair comment to sum up. Curiosity is really at the heart of it all.
Yeah, and you might even find that you start to enjoy it because you're connecting with people in your audience and you're getting information you wouldn't have had otherwise, and you're avoiding, going down dead ends. And it becomes, can you gamify it for yourself? Can it become a game of, ooh, I wonder what I'm going to find here? Like kids, when they're going to explore something, can you find your inner child, invite your inner child along for the ride, and say, rather than the terrified one, and say, this is going to be cool. I wonder what we're going to find out here. And
No,
if you
absolutely.
yeah. And if you bring that energy, then you're far more likely to get useful information than if you go in knowing before you ask.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really about respect. It's respect for your customers, because you want them to spend money with you on things that they need and want, and it's respect for you as a business owner and your time and your energy. So I think it's a beautiful thing for business owners to learn. It can help across the board, and with marketing as well, and getting your language right. And we've talked about this in the past. But I do have also a newsletter, and if some of your listeners want to sign up, it's called Jungle Juice, and it drops every Monday and has a lot of tips and stories and advice as well around understanding customers and getting in the right mindset.
I'm so glad you mentioned Jungle Juice, because I receive squadrillions of emails, and I am partially responsible for the overuse of electricity in server farms somewhere. So that's an environmental footprint that I'm not proud of and need to remedy. But your email, Jungle Juice, and as a wordsmith, I'm pretty selective about emails that I adore receiving. There are 3, I think, that I can think of off the top of my head, and yours is definitely one of them. So if you are going to order Do Penguins Eat Peaches, or wait for it to come out into your library, which is also a perfectly great idea, get on Katie's newsletter list, because you share really useful information every week. It's funny, it's punchy, it's entertaining, and it's super, super useful. So I will link for you to Katie's site. I will also link for you so you can get on her newsletter list. I will also link you to places that you can pre-order the book, and I will link up some of the resources that Katie mentioned in our conversation. Katie, thank you so much. It has been a delight. Curiosity, curiosity, curiosity.
Thank you so much, Anne.
See you soon.